My friend and I really like to go to the excavations. But we were not looking for dinosaurs, but military artifacts. During our campaigns, we have accumulated an impressive collection of trophies, including helmets, badges, patches, shell casings, and much more. Gradually, we began, so to speak, to expand the boundaries of our collection and put the finds in our garages and basements, since there was no longer room on the shelves. Despite this, we were in no hurry to part with our treasures. If we had sold them to a museum, we would have received pennies. So let all this stuff be kept with us. If it is necessary, we will sell it to private collections. If it is not necessary, we will continue to replenish it. So, this is how we would have continued our hunt for military antiques, if not for one incident. That day, Stos, my friend, and I were looking for a place for the next trip. As you probably already understood, our activities were illegal. In other words, we were black diggers. It is not difficult to understand that in our situation it was necessary to act cleanly and imperceptibly. In order to always be on the alert and know when to get away, we purchased photo traps. In addition, we ourselves punched the area to the level of security, the internet forums of the same desperate guys as us, and, of course, several fellow informants helped us in this. After a few hours of the above procedures, we managed to find the next goal. It was a tiny settlement located in the immediate vicinity of the famous Kursk Bulge. The village we found was not displayed on the general maps, and we were fabulously lucky to find it. Having carefully studied the provided picture of this area, Stos concluded that there is a very extensive swamp nearby. This swamp literally encircled the settlement itself, and this complicated the ways of approach and departure. But on the other hand, if you thoroughly comb through this swamp, you can find a lot of interesting things. After sitting in the chat for some more time, we were lucky enough to get more information about our object. We found out that fierce battles of the Red Army took place there, and that this village served as a kind of support and defensive point. Upon learning about this, my friend and I beamed, yes, this is a gold mine. Now there was definitely no doubt that our sortie would be successful. In general, we spent several days packing, after which we set out on our way. We drove for quite a long time. The road took about 8 hours. Already at the entrance to the village, we began to slowly go deeper into the forest, since leaving the car in the open was a stupid and risky undertaking. Having driven our SUV into the thicket and covered it with rags, we began to move towards the village with our backpacks. An hour later we came to a hill, on which we immediately noticed decayed, crooked huts. The map did not lie. Muddy water covered with duckweed stretched around the hill. One awkward movement and the subsequent diggers will pull you out already. So, sir. Well, it's obviously not safe here. I suggest we set up camp closer to the car. At least the ground is solid there. Besides, it will be harder to find us. Stos voiced his thoughts. I nodded approvingly, after which we turned around and went back to the forest. It took us a few minutes to set up the tents. With movements honed over several years, we quickly coped with the waterproof canvas. Then we began to put the rubberized suits and metal detectors in their places, as well as place photo traps on the surrounding trees. During these preparations, we did not notice how the day gradually declined to sunset. Already lying on the mattress, Stos was discussing tomorrow's action plan with me in a low voice. Tea was coming up on a nearby stove, bourgeois. After talking a lot and having a snack, we went to our tents, where we fell asleep very soon. The tea drunk before going to bed made itself felt closer to 1 o'clock in the morning. I hastily put on my berets, unzipped the tent and hurried to the nearest tree. While I was standing there was a vibration in my pocket. Taking my phone out of my pocket, I found the following picture. An alert was on the screen, motion detected on camera number 4. Time 0:49 inch. From what I saw, I shivered uncomfortably and began to calm myself. It could have been just a bird or a squirrel, nothing more. While I was thinking about it, the bushes cracked behind me. There was a thud, and I turned around sharply, already ready to fight, but quickly exhaled. It was Stos. I, still trembling from the adrenaline injection, whispered, "Your mother." "Stos! Are you crazy to scare like that? Why can't you sleep?" A friend tried to justify himself. "Sorry, Lech, I accidentally. I went to take a leak, saw you, and didn't notice the bushes in the dark, so I flopped." "Ah, now it's clear. Why do our photo traps work?" I chuckled. What? What kind of traps? Stas asked, puzzled. And such traps. Look. At 10 minutes to 1, camera 4 detected some movement. I showed the phone to a friend, but he just shrugged. At 10 minutes to 1, I was sleeping soundly and could not get out anywhere. Stas wanted to say something else, but his train of thought was interrupted by vibration and a new notification. Motion detected on camera 2. Time 1:02 inch. We exchanged glances. Lech. This camera is 300 meters away from us. If you and I are in danger, it's better to be ready and check. With a little excitement, the comrade said. I couldn't disagree with him. I don't want to be caught off guard by someone I don't understand. We ran to the tent for knives and lanterns. Already in full combat readiness, we, trying once again not to make noise, went in the direction of the second camera. Approaching the tree on which it was fixed, my friend and I simultaneously bent down and lay down in the bushes on the moss. It was almost impossible to distinguish anything in the darkness of the forest. At one point, Stas silently shoved me in the shoulder and pointed to the left with his finger. I strained my eyes and looked in that direction. Indeed, something was moving in the darkness. We silently watched this swarming until finally we heard some voices. The voices were barely distinguishable at this distance. I tried to make out the words, but nothing came out. A few minutes later, my friend whispered, I think there are 2 of them there. 100% are the same, tomb robbers, as we are, since they are sneaking around in the dark at such a time. We should show them that we were the first to take this place. Right now I'll shoo them away, play along with me. I was about to say something against it, but Stas jumped up abruptly and whistled in the direction of strangers, hand ho, stand, be afraid. Everyone stay where you are, we are armed. At the same moment, the beam of the friend's flashlight pierced the darkness and rushed into the distance, illuminating the figures sitting in the distance. Yes, Stas was right, there were 2 of them. But they weren't diggers at all. 2 pairs of glowing cat-like eyes stared at us out of the darkness. The unknown slowly rose from their knees. At this very moment, Stas and I were taken aback. They were wearing torn grey tunics with red stripes, and high boots were visible on their feet. Heads with glowing eyes were decorated with black rusty helmets. Both bastards were covered in blood from head to toe. Lowering the lantern lower, we realized whose blood it was. Behind them lay the mutilated corpse of some animal. We didn't have enough time to figure out what kind of beast it was, because these 2 monsters rushed towards us with a roar. We took off from the spot and ran away, filling the forest with our screams. We ran, stumbled, fell, got up. But the adrenaline surging in our blood did not let us stop. When the tents were a few meters away, Stas hunted out, "Fuck you." His gaze glazed over and froze. I looked in the same direction, dozens of glowing eyes were already darting between the trees. The glitter of helmets and a ferocious howl cut through the night silence. The crackling of branches was inexorably approaching. Then we remembered about the car and without wasting a second, rushed to it. And when it seemed to us that our salvation was near, 3 freaks blocked our way. Thick bloody saliva dripped from their rotten lips, and a heavy wheeze came from their throats. Stas snatched a knife from his trousers and threw it at the one to the left. He fell, holding his bleeding cheek with a roar. While his dead colleagues were standing in momentary confusion, a friend grabbed me by the sleeve and dragged me towards the village. The chase immediately resumed after us. Stas was rushing through the bushes, not letting go of me. I, too, did not lag behind, breathing heavily and listening to the trampling behind our backs. As soon as we started to break away, several machine gun bursts rang out, and Stas rolled head over heels on the ground. I rolled with him. My God, do these creatures also know how to shoot? My poor friend was writhing on the ground with a punctured knee, and I was feeling myself for injuries in horror. Fortunately, I was not hooked. I pulled the belt out of my pants with a sharp movement and tied my friend's leg. Lifting the wounded and groaning Stas on my shoulder, I continued moving again. Finally we ran out to the very place from where we had been exploring the village during the day. The growling and crackling of machine guns could still be heard from behind. There wasn't much time left. Supporting my friend, I began to move through the viscous mud of the swamp. Stas could barely move his legs. The distance to the hill, which previously seemed insignificant, has now turned into an endless one. We somehow balanced on the slippery ledges, but continued to move on. And then something happened that I was so afraid of. I stumbled and fell with my whole body into the swamp abyss. A friend suffered the same fate. My scream got stuck in bubbles in the muddy water. I desperately floundered and tried to grab onto something, but it was all in vain. Suddenly I felt that someone grabbed my arm, followed by a strong jerk. I was pulled out of the swamp like a rag and thrown onto the grass. After wiping my eyes from duckweed and slime, I shrank again. There was another dead man standing in front of me and staring at me. I was about to engage him in a fight, but then I noticed a few details. The equipment, as well as the helmet, did not look like German. Is there a dead Soviet soldier standing in front of me now? Did he really save us? As if in response to my thoughts, the half-rotted corpse lifted Stas and motioned for him to follow. As if hypnotized, I followed. But we had not gone 10 steps when we were overturned by an explosion. My ears were ringing, and my eyes were blurred. I didn't understand what happened. In some incomprehensible delirium, I began to feel the ground. Bright flashes thundered in my head, a wave of heat swept through my whole body. Suddenly I stopped feeling the ground under me, even though I was in a horizontal position, but when I opened my eyes a little, I saw the incredible. For Soviet zombie fighters were carrying me by my arms and legs. The dead brought me into some kind of hut, putting me on a broken bed by the window. Only now I realized what was going on. A real war unfolded on the street, a shootout and screams were getting louder by the second. It dawned on me, the Germans are storming the village. I looked out the window. Behind him there was a view of the slope from the forest, along which the soldiers of the German detachment ran like ants, throwing grenades and watering the opposite bank with machine guns. On the shore where I was, a company of dead Red Army soldiers desperately tried to push the enemy, responding with counter-fire. At that moment, the thought came to my mind, and where is Stas? After all, I can't leave him to die in this hell. I started limping towards the exit, taking the pitchfork standing in the hallway. Opening the door, I, looking around, began to sneak between the houses. Leaning against the shed, I began to look around the corner, assessing the situation. And as soon as I was ready to run, the barn door behind me was blown out by a powerful blow. I was thrown several meters away. I just managed to roll over and put the pitchfork forward. Fritz, who attacked me, immediately ran into them. The pitchfork pierced his stomach, but he, as if not feeling it, cut the air in front of my face with his hands and growled wildly. With every second, he was ripping open his belly more and more, pouring blood from his mouth on my face. I spat and continued the desperate fight. But then, suddenly, the German carcass hanging over me abruptly drifted away. The pitchfork also flew off with him. Lying on the ground, I saw a tall figure in a black leather raincoat standing next to me. On his head, judging by the outlines, was a cap. I was just starting to get up when a heavy forged boot landed on my throat. The figure silently pulled out a pistol from his bosom, reloaded with a loud metallic click and pointed the barrel at me. From lack of oxygen, a white veil began to thicken before my eyes. The last thing I saw was a glimpse of a skull on a stranger's cap for a second, then a shot rang out. In the morning, I still found my friend. He was happily waving at me from the shore. We hugged and looked at each other. He was obviously less lucky than me. At least I have a hole in my head, and half of his skull was blown off. Well, anyway, this is our baptism of fire. Our brave guys immediately came out to meet us. Some smiled with slack jaws, others looked at us with empty eye sockets. Now they didn't seem so creepy to me, and Stas behaved quite calmly. We understood that now we had become another addition to the valiant Red Army.